So welcome to the Network Dialogue on Guidance and Standards for Security by Design. The event is organized in the framework of the SOAR project. My name is Gloria Oddo and I work at the Architects Council of Europe. Unfortunately, my colleague Veronica is sick today, so I will try to speak on her behalf. So some housekeeping rules before starting. So please ensure that your microphone and your camera are off during the sessions. There's going to be further occasions to interact with us. For instance, you can use the chat box during the whole meeting, or later on at the end of the presentations. We still will have a sli.do session and also a Q&A session for discussing. Also, this event will be recorded and it will be posted on the SOAR website and social media. So in case you are not you're not okay with that, but you still want to interact with us, please be aware of this this factor. Quick presentation about us. So we are one of the three partners of the SOAR project. The Architects Council of Europe basically is the umbrella organization representing all European architects. Roughly, the estimation is 506,000 architects from 30 countries. So basically what we do is representing and defending their interests at European level towards the European institutions. And we also take part to European projects to influence the discussion, let's say. Our objectives, so basically we are the single voice of architects, and what we do is taking care of the educational and professional standards, also ensuring the professional and transnational mobility, so recognizing the previous degrees and work experience among different European countries. And we have also, among others, one of the work group is really dedicated to architectural quality and sustainability of the built environment, which is still connected to today's topic, because what we do in SOAR is basically we take care of the security by design aspect, which means not only make a place worship more secure, but still maintaining the attractiveness and the beauty, let's say, the quality of architecture intact. So today is going to be related to specifically to CCTV cameras and entrances. This is one of a series of events. Some of you may have attended already a past event online. We also had another event in Brussels. And as you already read on our agenda, so basically, sorry, I heard someone speaking. Could you please mute yourself, because otherwise it's going to be difficult to follow. Okay, so basically what we are going to do is exploring topics such as architectures, windows, structure, landscaping, perimeters, entrances and exits, all over the physical elements. And then also aspects like surveillance, control room, access control, screening equipment, alarm detection systems, information security and security related technology. And also, of course, sensitive design principles for religious sites, which shall be explored to balance the need to provide a secure environment while creating the atmosphere of self-reflection that manifests from form, space, scale, materiality, and light in spatial spaces. As I said, this is one of multiple events. So the sli.do session and the interactive session later on will also help us defining the content for following events. In fact, this session today, the topic today was chosen because some of the attendees in our events really raised the point of, okay, how can I protect better my place of worship? What can I do to better ensure, security, but still in a non-invasive way, let's say. So later session will help us understand what's your need in terms of faith leader or volunteer or architects or professional in your own field. Sorry. Okay. So quick update on the agenda. As I said, unfortunately, one of the speakers, Mr. Loch, cannot attend either. So we are going to miss unfortunately for myself and for the architects connected, we are going to miss the architect points of view, but I hope there will be a second chance to catch up with this. So attending, this is me kicking off the session. Then later, we are going to have Shaukat Warraich and Kaashif Awan from EFI, the Enhancing Faith Institution, which is the coordinator of the SOAR project. Then we're going to have Mr. Patrick Padding from the iLead project, which is also funded by with European funds, and is going to give us a little bit of his perspective on that. And I hope this will be one of the first occasions we'll better collaborate with other projects. And also we're going to have two representatives from the CEN, the European Committee for Standardization, Mrs. Christina Thorngren and Mrs. Alena Simkova. I hope I pronounced them correctly. And then we're going to have the interactive session with Slido and a Q&A moment. So it's going to last a little bit less than what expected, but in case we have more time for questions if needed. Before starting the event, I would like to highlight the fact that we are going to have another physical event. This time is going to be in Amsterdam because the Netherlands is one of the 7 pilot countries of the SOAR project. So in case you are available, a registration link will come shortly. You can always subscribe to the SOAR newsletter and check the SOAR website. We're going to put this in the chat later on. So in case you're available on the 28th of June, it's going to be in Amsterdam. This time, this session later will be about security by design in existing and heritage buildings. So again, for the architects or for professionals in this field, it might be an interesting occasion. So now, before giving the floor to Shaukat, I would like to make a quick test with you with the Slido, the interactive poll. So basically, what you can do is opening another tab on your browser and go to Slido, sli.do or sli.com works as well. And you insert the hashtag SBD, security by design, or otherwise you can scan the QR code in the next slide in case you want to connect through your mobile device, which is like phone or tablet, etc. So just to warm up, I'm going to open it myself. So we want to know where are you based, just to know you a little bit better. Finland, oh wow, welcome. Dublin, Italy, Hungary, Finland. The more people select the same option, the bigger the word becomes. So I will also yeah, I tapped Brussels myself because we are based in Brussels and now it's becoming bigger. Okay. Okay, so I think 13 people got the Slido, so this is great. We are going to use it properly later, so this is already a good result. Okay, And next question, what is your professional profile among those? Okay, nice. I think we have a balanced, well, hopefully balanced audience. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Now I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll give the floor to Shaukat. Are you connected? Yes, I can see him. Yeah. Hello.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Good morning. Hans, good morning. I'm going to share my screen. Can you see that, Gloria?
Yes, but not in presentation mode. Could you make it bigger? Perfect. Thanks.
Okay, great. So good morning, everybody. My name is Shaukat Warraich. I'm the director of EFI, Enhancing Faith Institutions. And as Gloria said, we are the lead coordinators for the SOAR project. I'm just going to basically give you an overview of the project and some of the successes so far. We're in our second year now. This is a 2-year project. We're now going into the second year. And I'm just going to touch upon some of the kind of key highlights of what's been achieved so far, as well as just giving you an overview of the project. I'm delighted, obviously, to see so many architects and representatives of various institutions today. It's a great number. And this is a very important topic and a pillar of this project, security by design. But this fits into this whole arena of protecting places of worship. SOAR project, people ask me all the time. I was just in a UN conference yesterday and they're asking me, what does SOAR stand for? And it's basically strengthening the security and resilience of at-risk religious sites and communities. So we just abbreviated that very long sentence into the word SOAR. There are currently 2 other partners involved with us, Finchurch Aid and Architects Council of Europe. And in this program today, we are being hosted by the Architects Council of Europe. Where did this program idea come from? Why has there been a focus on places of worship? And I'm just going to highlight 3 or 4 areas that have changed policy around the world. These are 2 attacks in the UK. The person you see on your bottom left-hand corner, this was a PhD student on a UK grant scheme, came to the UK, called a person called Lapchick. Within literally weeks of coming to the UK, he planted 5 bombs in the middle of England, a place called Birmingham area, outside of mosques. And luckily, those bombs didn't kill anybody, but it was a major security challenge. And this individual then waited outside of a mosque and murdered this person called Mohammed Salim, as you can see a picture next to his picture. This person was arrested and has gone to jail for life in the UK. The person you can see in your top left-hand corner, this was a far-right, both of these people are far-right extremists. This person, the one on the top left, was basically he had prepared a suitcase bomb to take to a mosque in South London. And this was a revenge. He said he wanted to commit revenge following the Ariana Grande attack in Manchester, which killed 27 people. The intelligence services were watching this person, and as he was about to leave the property with the suitcase bomb, and he was going to take the bomb on a Friday, where a Muslim community prays in a mosque, and this mosque is the biggest mosque in South London, where he could have killed, hundreds of people. So these events changed policy, specifically in the UK, but these are pictures of 51 people that were killed in Christchurch, in New Zealand, a place where people thought that is a very tranquil nation, very low crime rate, but unfortunately a far-right person went into a mosque and two mosques in particular and murdered 51 people, and then was planning to go to a creche, a faith-based creche, and was luckily stopped by the police. There's so many incidents, but I just wanted to highlight a few where the world has woken up to the challenge of protecting places of worship. This was another horrendous attack on Easter Sunday, the most holiest day in the Christian calendar, where two brothers walked into a church and killed 280 people, including 45 foreigners, which were tourists, and wounded over 600 people. These were facilities that were full at the time in congregational prayer, and unfortunately, many people lost their lives. We see also online the glorification of these terrorists. This is the person that killed the people in Christchurch. He's been anointed. The picture in the middle, as you can see, is Hitler and another person who killed many Black people in America, anointing this person as a saint. And the symbolism, as you can see, is very faith-orientated to kind of give it the justification. And the killing you might have heard in Buffalo 2 weeks ago, the individual was using the same literature as the picture indicates, the Great Replacement, and this has been pushed by the far right online. The picture you see on the right-hand side is of an image from an online gaming system on the dark web, where basically far-right people are saying, train yourself in weapons, but also shooting, and encouraging people to basically kill more than this individual that killed people in Christchurch. So unfortunately, the online space is glorifying these terrorists, and they're actually actively promoting the fact that places of worship should be attacked. This is just a representation of the level of fatalities over the past 20 years. I've just taken it up to Christchurch. If I was to add 2 more years, the images would be, these kind of round circles would be unfortunately bigger, because the level of fatalities, unfortunately, is increasing. And these are just some images of the individual at the top. Is the same person that you see in this image in the middle. This guy wanted to start a race war and walked into a Black church in America and killed many Black people. The middle image is of a synagogue in Pittsburgh, where a far-right person went into a synagogue and unfortunately murdered people there, as well as the picture at the bottom is of a mosque, outside of a mosque in Christchurch. And the gentleman you see is the imam, and his white cloth is covered with the blood of the people that were worshipping with him. To bring it up to context to this year, unfortunately, attacks have not gone down. Unfortunately, they've gone up. This is a picture on the top left-hand corner of a mosque in Pakistan. Over 200 people were murdered there. There's a picture of on the bottom left is in Germany, a man shot at a mosque in Halle. Picture of Detroit of an entrance point for women, where the attacker was apprehended and terminated. And then the picture of the top right-hand corner is of an individual that went from the UK to America and took hostages in the synagogue in America, in Texas. This is up to March of this year. So what's the ambition of the project? What we're essentially trying to do is empower communities to take responsibility for their security and health and safety. And this is through training, effective communication, engaging faith leaders, architects, urban planners, bringing them together, the law enforcement, police, because working in partnership is critical, and developing the architecture for communication is critical. But we are training faith leaders, congregations in 7 pilot countries. The second key objective is to build this resilience and partnerships. The partnerships are critical, especially with faith communities in law enforcement. And we're delighted to see that the police and architects are coming forward to engage in some of the training programs, and I'll show some images from those events. But also helping decision makers make the correct choices to improve safety. This is basically policy level dialogue with policymakers, as well as metro level, regional level, and at state level, and at European level, but also with the decision makers in places of worship. So they make the best security decisions, whether that's architectural decisions or whether that's to do with other security protocols that are relevant for their place of worship and their size and scale and the nature of worship. So basically making sure that they're making the right decision, and that's helped with a risk assessment that we're conducting with 50 venues around Europe, and where I can happily say that we're quite well into capturing those 50 locations. How are we working on the ground? We have CDOs, that these are community development officers that are engaging faith institutions as well as law enforcement, municipality leads, and other stakeholders within the regions. These CDOs are critical to our success so far. These are people that are engaging face-to-face and bringing people to the training events. And we are not just engaging large venues, we're engaging medium-sized to small venues, and even venues and faith communities that just hire facilities for their places of worship, whether it's Friday Jummah prayer or Sunday congregational prayer in a hall. We're engaging all sizes and all scales. These are the 7 countries that we're working in: Denmark, Hungary, Germany, France, Netherlands, Austria, and Belgium. And we are virtually we're in every one of these countries at the moment. We have engaged various people, and we're actually practically delivering risk assessments everywhere except for Austria. We're going to Austria next week, but in every other country, we have started to do the whole program implementation. Before we engage on the ground, we've done a deep dive on attacks on places of worship in all the countries, and all our engagements are based on data gathered through research and our engagement with organizations like OSCT, various police authorities. We have engaged with them to kind of understand what is happening on the ground. So this strategy on the ground is not just by putting our finger in the air. There's been some serious research being done to understand where attacks have taken place. This is basically our mode of activities, the stages that we have. We engage with all stakeholders, then we call them to training programs at level 2. These are face-to-face engagements. There's a 5-hour training program. This training program covers 3 key areas: security, the principles of security, security by design. What are the principles of security by design? And we generally ask an architect to present that. We also, within that, we also include in local law enforcement agencies that are in the area that have a vested interest to protect places of worship. And the third key component is the issue regarding risk assessment, how to do a risk assessment. And we follow the EU risk assessment guide for places of worship, and we underpin everything that we do within a European context. From that training program, what we have done is selected, or people come forward and say they will require a risk assessment, and we select those institutions that have requested a risk assessment, and we then go physically to do a risk assessment with them, and we do a very deep analysis of the various risks at that place of worship. We provide a report, and based upon that report, activities are conducted to improve the safety and the design of that facility. And the last component, but is predicated throughout the series of this initiative, is a policy level or metro level or state level dialogue with decision makers about developing the whole nature around protecting places of worship. And I think the European Union is doing a very, very good job in terms of bringing this to the attention at state level. And there's a lot of activity going on at the EU level to basically bring synergy between various stakeholders in protecting places of worship. We've had various regional launches in Brussels, in Cologne, in France, and those have been very well attended. And we can see that there's a good appetite now building up from faith leaders. And when I say faith leader, this is multi-faith. This is not one particular faith focused. We are talking to all faiths, Muslim, Christian, Hindu, Sikh, Buddhists, Jains, all the various different denominations have been contacted by our CDOs. We are reacting to events on the ground as well. So wherever there's been an attack, this was an attack, the picture in the middle was an attack on a mosque in Germany, and we worked with the politicians and the national level organizations to basically bring together training. And wherever there's been attack, actually, we've been in that city within days and actually lined up training programs literally within weeks of an event taking place. But just to give you some impression of all the different engagements that we're having with different faith leaders. The training programs, again, have been quite, post-COVID, have been very well attended, and we're getting to a stage where we're actually turning people away now because of the interest that people have in protecting their places of worship, which is great to see. I think our communication is working, and it'd be great to get some of these communities to engage with architects, because nearly all of these places of worship are saying that we have architectural, or we want to build something new, or we want to build something fresh. We need an architect. Could you recommend somebody? And hence it'd be great to kind of connect you, if you're an architect, to these communities. I won't go dwell too much into the detail of this slide, but what this slide is trying to indicate with the arrow is that we are trying to bring a new kind of post within faith institutions, and this is the security lead. The training program provides the insight into developing a security lead, and the security lead will probably and will actually engage with police, fire, and the municipality leads. And this security lead infrastructure is something that we're leaving behind when we do the training. And I'm glad to say that many organizations are starting to select individuals to be that security lead. Security by design is a critical pillar of this program, and I'm delighted to say with our colleagues at ACE that there's been some significant developments in the research and marketing and communication of this principle. People are beginning to understand it in the faith communities, and this is a critical area of development, whether it's scientific or architectural in Europe. And I think the European Union is very keen to develop this area, and I'm delighted to hear that there's going to be a further presentation, a couple of presentations on this area. So I'm not going to dwell on it too much, but it's a pillar of our training program that we are delivering in the 7 countries. We have developed resources that are currently available on our website on some of the principles of SPD. This is available on the SOAR website. So if you go to soarproject.eu, you will be able to download these documents. And I'm delighted to say that many people are beginning to download these and explore the principles behind SPD. And our colleagues at ACE with us are planning to do a series of lectures and online as well as offline communication on these subjects, and it'd be great to have you present in some of those events. This is some of the information that we provide, and we go into this level of detail when we talk about doors and windows and locks and alarms and access control, and people are quite interested in seeing what this is. and where it works for them and where to actually go and buy this material. So there's a lot of interest for that. We are providing materials. It's been translated in various languages. This is in Urdu because one of the communities we engaged with was a large Pakistani community, and they wanted this material to be in the language. It should be language specific, which we're doing. This is a material that's been produced and being distributed for free, and it's free to download from our website, and we're providing it also in our training programs. Gloria mentioned earlier this issue of our newsletter. This is available on the website. If you'd like to publish anything, if you have any information that's relevant to the subject, if you have an architectural firm that's interested in engaging with the faith communities, you have services that you think you can render to these organizations, please get in touch with us. We'd love to put you in touch with the community that is developing their infrastructure. And we've had many people saying, look, we're looking for an SPD focused architect or somebody that can guide and provide that insight. And I've seen some people on the call this morning that are interested in SPD, and we'd love to get you in touch with the community. Also, what we've done is that we've produced checklists for faith communities for religious festivals. This is a quick bite-sized documents that basically help and engage faith communities to see what risk analysis they need to do before a religious event. And again, I'm delighted to say that many faith communities are downloading this information for self-help, and this is what we're trying to do. This is very much what I wanted to say. We also, I just wanted to just finalize things with a short video just to summarize everything, and I'll leave my contacts on the final slide if you have any further questions. One of my colleagues also from EFI, Kaashif, will be on the call, who's one of the project leads, is ready to engage with any questions. But I will basically stop with this video. Thank you, Gloria. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Shaukat. While you were talking, I left in the chat the two links. One is for the downloadable resources. It's free of charge, so download as much as you want. And also the link to subscribe to our newsletter, so you can always be updated on our latest news and events and trainings and so on. We'll leave also now the floor to Mr. Kaashif Awan, also from EFI, the SOAR coordinator. Can you, Catalina, can you share the screen, please?
Yes, sure. I'm on it. Can you see it?
Perfect, yeah.
Thank you, Catalina, for that, and Gloria. So hi all, as mentioned, my name is Kaashif Awan. I am one of the coordinators of the project and director of Enhancing Faith Institutions, who are the lead coordinators of the SOAR project. So this presentation is a discussion which goes into some of the technical standards and details related to the subject matter at hand today, which is specifically focusing on CCTV surveillance and perimeter security for places of worship. So obviously it's a very technical discussion, which I'm going to go through as quick as I can, but obviously going into some detail. So just introducing the subject and the purpose of this presentation, and what I plan to do is obviously begin to explore the basic issues connected with the physical security aspects of places of worship and the risks that they can face, discuss some of the measures that can reduce risks in areas of building vulnerability, and understand the concept of standards in the area of SBD and what guidance materials should be available for faith organizations, architects, and installers. Next slide, please, Catalina. Our discussion today, as I mentioned, obviously is focused on perimeters, entrances, exits, access points, surveillance, CCTV, and detection and response. Obviously, it's quite a few detailed points there, which are all quite interlinked with each other, that we're going to delve into, and obviously discuss in the discussion today in my presentation. Obviously, I aim to look at the advantages of security access at the point of boundaries and look at the options if access can only then be secured and controlled at the building. So this is the discussing first line and second line of defense, so to speak, of places of worship. Included in our discussion will be the role of CCTV and how that can work with physical measures of protection. Next slide, please. Just a bit of context before we begin, to kind of shape the discussion of today together. When we speak about standards in security by design, at the moment, few are published by the EU at the current time, although we know that there is a toolkit of guidance that will be released this year, which will again provide those standards and technical guidance measures. So as soon as that released, again from the SOAR project, we'll be sharing that across our network. At the moment, EU directives and quality standards do exist for the manufacture and installation of products used in security-related installations. And it's important to remember that much of what can be achieved on any site, any place of worship, will be subject to local planning regulations. So the working relationship between the places of worship and professionals, as the architects, local authority, is something that is encouraged. And obviously the discussion today and aspects discussed of perimeter security, entrances, CCTV, it is encouraged, obviously, that the engagement the place of worship has with the local authority, local council, and architects is had, because obviously regulations differ between city to city and country to country. So obviously what this does is try to provide an outline, this discussion today, but that relationship between the place of worship and the professionals in the localities that they exist in is very, very critical. Next slide, please. So these are the security buildings. Obviously, security of buildings have ancient principles that still apply today. So obviously this is just providing a bit of background information on why security is integral and so important. These principles above have been well understood by ancient civilizations and are based around discouragement or prevention being the best form of protection. If this fails, then obviously having the ability to physically defend and secure the property offers protection to its occupants and allows time for help to be summoned. And these 2 points obviously is what we'll be kind of going into, and how places of worship can discourage, prevent, and then respond to potential incidents. But it's important to remember that the principles only work well if places of worship have fully understood the risks and the best way to mitigate them. And obviously this comes back to the aspect of risk assessments, something that Shaukat mentioned that the SOAR project are delivering. And it's important obviously to understand the potential weaknesses and strengths of your places of worship. A risk assessment will do just that. And again, as SOAR providing those, and then once an institution can have a risk assessment, planning then on ways to prevent, discourage, and respond will be a lot easier. Next slide, please. So these are some factors to think about, and it's useful to bear in mind some of the factors involved in some types of offending associated with places of worship. So as you can see, there's aspects of vandalism, arson attacks, burglary, attacks with IED, attacks with firearm, and attacks with weapon and vehicles. Obviously, some of these are a lot more common, specifically vandalism and burglary, and potentially, unfortunately, attacks with weapons and vehicles, which for what our research has shown us in attacks are on the rise. But obviously, what this shows underneath some of these common and uncommon attacks is the role that CCTV, surveillance, and perimeter security can have in detection and prevention of attacks. So what's interesting from just the initial kind of breakdown of these is that the certain types of crimes obviously sometimes not discouraged by certain security measures, whilst others are almost eliminated by the presence. So for obviously burglary, CCTV can put someone off completely, linked to a fire alarm, visible CCTV. In other areas, such as attacks with a weapon or a vehicle, perimeter design, obviously, and having, for instance, which we'll go into later in the presentation, a strong kind of outline of bollards or reducing access points for vehicles can stop an attack immediately. In the very unlikely situation of an attack with an IED, this obviously comes back to aspects of, again, probably response and having that second line of defense within the building to be able to respond to certain situations. So what this does is just giving, obviously, the audience a bit of insight into the different types of attacks that exist and how surveillance, CCTV, and perimeter security can help detect, protect, and respond to such incidents. Next slide, please. So yeah, just before we continue, in all our discussions on the SOAR project, we have placed paramount importance in any security measure being appropriate to the setting and being practical to implement. So obviously, security measures, designs, implementations need to be harmlessly integrated into the environment, practical, achievable, and proportionate. So this is just a kind of a short reminder for places of worship that obviously there are certain things to remember when implementing some of these security measures. Next slide, please. So this obviously now looking at some examples and looking at some of the critical aspects of perimeters where good design has a big part to play. Specifically new projects, which obviously this is, good perimeter design can be considered at an early stage, but in any case, obviously achieving a high degree of physical security can be obviously a lot of times costly and involve extensive hard landscaping and boundary construction. But effective perimeter protection adds an early layer of security and protection for building occupants. So obviously this design that you can see in your picture, obviously, if it's a new build place of worship, is something that is probably some that can be integrated into the design, obviously working with an architect. And just looking at the perimeter security of this image, you can see a few things straight away. As you can see, there's a protection around the building using kind of greenery. So you can see these trees, you can see the steps, and you can see these small bollards, which again enhance, again, environmentally, is a lot better for the environment to do something like this rather than have big steel gates. Looks a lot pleasing on the eye. But again, this will prevent a lot of potential harm to the actual building in terms of vehicle ramming, specifically related to that. And you can also see the pavement material, which will also, in the design of the pavement material, is also being put together to prevent certain attacks with vehicles, vehicle ramming. So you can just see from one of these examples here that how perimeter security is important and how it can be visually put together. But obviously, as I mentioned, a project like this, a new build, so if you're building a new place of worship, something like this could be integrated, obviously, but will cost a fair bit of money. But obviously, this is something that, obviously, just to show as an example. Next slide, please, Katerina. So this is more relatable to, I think, places of worship, that obviously your common place of worship, your common church, synagogue, or mosque, in an urban setting. Obviously, urban locations do not have controllable perimeters as much as the other image that I just showed you. Therefore, access control needs to be implemented at the building. In areas of buildings with high footfall, controlling access can be very challenging. As you can see, this specific building is straight off your common road, your common street. So having access to the actual front door of this building is very difficult to prevent in terms of the perimeter security. So then your second line of defense becomes the door and your response within the building. So with situations in urban settings, good lighting and CCTV can discourage and detect low offenses such as vandalism or graffiti, as well as the informal surveillance provided by neighborhood properties. These locations can be extremely vulnerable to vehicle-borne or IED attacks and vehicle ramming, as little protection can be applied where access is available directly from the street. In this scenario, obviously, keeping worshippers protected during their prayer times and religious events can be quite challenging. But again, this is where which we'll go into a bit later, the importance of the door and having a response system and some of the surveillance can help detect any problems and then allowing the institution to respond to it without any problems or limiting the issues that may arise. And next slide, please. So this again is focusing, looking at gates related to perimeter security, and some important points about perimeter gates is the two different types here. Is obviously one on your left, you have the electronic gates, which are effective and controllable from the building, but need to be operated mainly if power is lost. Rising barriers control vehicles well, which you can see on your right, which is a lot more common, a lot cheaper, but cannot control obviously pedestrian access or prevent a committed attack with a vehicle. Obviously people can go underneath or around, but it does provide at least some form of security. A high risk of tailgating exists, which reduces the effectiveness. But some of the products on the market can appear too industrial or sensitive for heritage sites specifically. But you'll see that a lot of institutions that apply the electronic gates on the left, obviously your first line of defense is right on the border of the place of worship. So you can really control who has access, how. Obviously the practicality of this can be potentially challenging for most places of worship. So a lot of the places of worship that I have seen and experienced have a lot of the barriers on the right, which you can see, which again are very effective. However, obviously the risk assessments will show that obviously pedestrians can still have access, and having those plans in place to detect with CCTV and surveillance of any potential issues are important. Next slide, please. So obviously this aspect now, looking at doors, which again are critical, a very critical access point of protecting places of worship. They're probably the most important consideration when assessing any attack on a place of worship. And also, whilst modern buildings are easy to secure effectively, they're at the most efficient if used in conjunction with keypad or fob entry systems and CCTVs. During prayer times, when the main entrance door is frequently open, the place of worship obviously needs to really consider placing staff to monitor people in and out of the building. Fire exits obviously critical, and side doors are important as the main door, and whenever possible should be alarmed to alert staff if an attempt is made to access unlawfully. Special procedures are needed during prayer times, as mentioned, and the main prayer room should have staff allocated to doors using an entrance or exit with plans prepared to keep worshippers safe if the building is attacked during the ceremony or worship. Obviously, the one on the left is very, very secure. Again, it's linked to a fob. Obviously, the practicalities of this can be challenging, especially for mosques with, you know, five prayers a day, you know, hundreds and thousands of people in and out. However, obviously, you can see from some of these other doors, they're just as robust. And the one on the top right is very similar to the door. And obviously, an example I want to give here is the attack in Hal that happened a few years ago in the synagogue, where the door, it was only because the door was so robust and secured well that the attacker didn't manage to actually break through. And if he did, obviously the casualties would have, you know, could have been untold. But the effectiveness of the door prevented real problems to exist in that specific attack. So doors are very, very important, ensuring that they're robust, but also having someone manning the doors, a process of having an entrance and a clear exit signs. The situation in Christchurch, when the attack happened, a lot of people couldn't open the exit doors, weren't sure where the exit doors were, how to exit the building, and obviously which caused a lot of problems and unfortunate casualties. So the doors are the second or first line of defense for many places of worship. If your perimeter security is potentially breached, the door becomes, again, the main barrier between the congregations and people inside and the individual trying to commit an attack. Next slide, please, Catalina. So this is basically looking at heritage sites. Obviously, as Gloria mentioned, we have an event in Amsterdam at the end of the month specifically looking at security by design for heritage sites. Obviously, heritage sites you can't just knock down and build in SBD. So obviously the discussion for the event that we'll have in Amsterdam will be looking at how you can add security by design to an existing heritage site. A lot of places of worship are used as heritage sites at the moment, but looking at some potential solutions for these, creating a secondary area or versatile or visible but security can be very effective and allows clear view of visitors on the place of worship. It can be used in conjunction with the electronic locks or intercom entry systems. And this is what I'm referring to here, is if you can see, is that obviously you've got the front doors open. An individual can come in those front doors, and what these heritage sites have managed to do is obviously put this like glass box together, which is controlled electronically. There's CCTV within this box, so you can see exactly who is coming in, who is coming out, and again, if there is anything that is alarming, these can be locked electronically quite well. And you can see at the top of these glass boxes, you can see that there isn't any gaps, so even the top is secured as well. So just in case an attacker wanted to, again, was in it to try to climb over or throw any potential weapons or things that could cause harm on top, you couldn't do it. So this is an example of a creative way a heritage site can protect its entrances using, again, security by design, by implementing this in. And obviously this is something that we'll be able to go into a lot more detail on in our event in Amsterdam on the 28th of June. But obviously this just gives hopefully an idea of how heritage sites can be protected and things implemented to protect, especially in regards to entrances. Next slide, please. Windows, again, a very important part, obviously linked to CCTV, surveillances and entrances or places of worship. they present challenges because of their role in place of worship buildings. Obviously, many of them are highly decorative, include religious iconography, and have a high value to the place of worship. A risk assessment, and obviously going back to the initial point of, you know, a lot of these, the weaknesses and strength and areas of concern, places of worship may have, obviously will be mitigated through a risk assessment in which they can act upon. But a risk assessment will show areas of the building which areas of the building can be accessed via specific windows, indicating which areas of the building are vulnerable. Obviously, windows are higher risk due to vandalism and burglary. Most in cases of those, windows are smashed and people enter through there. As you can see on the bottom right, kind of mosaic type, probably single glazed windows has been obviously smashed through. So again, with windows, it's very difficult obviously to protect windows in that sense. As you can see, the iconography on the top left, a lot of these, especially churches, have single glazed windows which are very, very easy to shatter. But there are ways to obviously go around protecting these areas and obviously windows, which you will see in the next slide. So obviously these are some options for retrofit options: retractable bars, external or internal shutters, secondary glazing, and windows alarms. So you can see that there's options on the top left. You can see that this, again, similar windows to the previous slide, but with shutters, that window won't be able to be accessed. And then obviously you have these other solutions which can be implemented, and a lot of institutions that I visited recently in Europe have started to implement some of these retrofit options to protect their windows. Surveillance. So now we will examine the issues of surveillance and the means to use CCTV for various security solutions. The subject is broadly split into two categories: formal and informal. Formal surveillance. So this is the means by which risks can be mitigated using trained volunteers, guards, CCTV, and remote monitoring services. The primary responsibility is to improve security. It provides a high level of deterrence, reassurance for worshippers, and a formal way to observe, gather, and process evidence. So obviously the CCTVs there, you've obviously got the security guards, which again, monitoring the situation, patrolling the areas to alert to any potential issues or anything that doesn't look right. Again, they are the first responders that can then obviously alert the management of the place of worship, and then obviously the police. The informal surveillance examples, obviously this provides a level of security and reassurance from those whose primary responsibility is not security, but obviously will alert staff and police if needed. Obviously places of worship who actively promote good neighbors can benefit from that positive relationship. So these are obviously your kind of your regular attendees, congregants, that are keeping an eye out on the situation. Obviously see someone that looks suspicious or see something that isn't right, they'll be able to alert management and obviously police as well. So obviously this is something that is encouraged because again, it's an informal way of surveillance. But using a quick example, obviously in the Easter attack in Sri Lanka, where there was which Shaukat obviously showed in his presentation, where over 250 people died. In the CCTV cameras, you can see people with backpacks entering the premises of the church and making the way into the building. And one individual who was a congregant could see that one of the individuals looked suspicious before he actually came towards the building, confronted him, unfortunately died, but prevented probably hundreds of deaths in doing so. So having this informal surveillance of people, your general congregation and worshippers, obviously just being aware of what is happening around them, can be very useful and important for obviously protection of places of worship as well. Next slide, please. CCTVs. Obviously, when we think of CCTVs, what do we think of? It is it is the large complex schemes of obviously large banks of cameras or screens, or is it small discrete cameras linked to door entry systems? So obviously when we think of CCTV, sometimes think of these mass cameras and you've got hundreds of monitors seeing, you know, managing everything. But a lot, again, in 2022, CCTVs can be very discreet, very small, and you can manage a lot of it through actually, if you've got security guard or one of the key managements, they can manage everything through a singular phone these days. So obviously the risk assessment should suggest what level of CCTV coverage is required and what level of quality is needed to fulfill its purpose. Most systems are defined through the completion of an operational requirement document, usually completed by a specialist. So obviously these are just some of the examples. The older school kind of CCTV for large institutions will have these banks of screens, and you have 4 to 5 people manning the screens. A lot of the situations now, there's obviously something called Ring, which you know, a lot of institutions we've seen started to operate on, which again, you can assess the surveillance of different areas of your places of worship, again, accessing an app through your phone. So that can be done by, again, the security guard or specific manager of the places of worship. And you can see the camera on the left, which is very small, very discreet, which can capture different areas of the places of worship. Obviously, they're remote, linked to alarms, and obviously can have digital recordings up to hundreds of hours. Next slide, please. So what is it designed to do? So obviously, I'm just going to quickly go into some examples here of understanding its purpose. It's really important to understand what the system is designed to do and how it can fit into the overall security process of the building. For instance, to monitor and control groups of people or crowd movements. It is not important to be able to always, obviously, to identify, you know, the full face. Similarly, if it used in conjunction with an alarm system, which prompts a police response, image quality may not be the primary requirement, but about following the movement of people. However, for systems that are used to recognize and identify people and may be used in, obviously, court for evidence, quality and image size is critical. In any case, CCTV hardware is now highly advanced, discrete with simple digital management. A wide variety of appropriate camera equipment is available that will fit well into places of worship scenarios. So just going through these specific points, so obviously monitoring and control. So this system of CCTV is used in mainly large football stadiums, shopping centers, which is about moving crowds from, say, gate A to gate B, and it's about large crowd movement. So seeing the movement of different crowds, which can be used in places of worship, you know, on Easter, on Eid, you're talking thousands of people around the building. So having kind of this aspect of understanding would be important. So the monitoring and control aspect of CCTV obviously is important. Detect is someone obviously assessing someone who's getting access to a building from who shouldn't be. So that's breaking in a window, accessing a door they shouldn't. This type of CCTV obviously will detect straight away someone getting access to the building and obviously responding to that situation. Observe is obviously detecting an individual that shouldn't be there and be able to follow up around the area or around the process of that situation. System recognition is a criminal which obviously is committing a crime, which can be then shared. As you see a lot of kind of the news systems, you'll see an attack on the street, and obviously it will be calling for people to come forward who know the individual. And that is this image you can see on the top left. So you can see a mugging taking place. So this is about recognizing, this is CCTV that can recognize specific attacks such as those. And then identify system, which is the best quality and the close-up quality around facial recognition, which is this man trying to get access to the building. You can see, which obviously picks up facial features, which can then obviously help the police track him down. So obviously these are just different types of CCTVs and the processes that are linked to them. Next slide, please. So obviously just to conclude now, obviously obviously it's quite a complex set of topics, but obviously I've tried to cover a wide, obviously as much detail as possible with them in a short space of time. But to conclude, obviously it's worth reminding ourselves about the distinct roles of people and organizations involved in the security review of places of worship. The relationship between all parties are critical in achieving success and allows each party to work on reliable information. This simplified chart above demonstrates the communication flow and areas of responsibility. So obviously the client, which obviously will be the place of worship looking to enhance its security, should be able to describe the use of space and the risk associated with its use through an assessment. The architect, where building improvements and modifications are needed, to translate obviously the place of worship's information into a design proposal, and then the installer and contractor obviously works the brief to complete the scheme and hand over to the place of worship. So this is obviously again around the three-way understanding of how, obviously, if there is an implementation that needs to be done from a security point of view, the place of worship working with the architect and the installer, local contractor, is important. And obviously just finishing, going back to a point I made at the beginning around, if you want to implement security, if you want security by design features and different aspects, obviously it's important to engage your local authority and council who understand on the standards and implementation required. As I said, it differs from city to city and country to country. So always start with that communication, and then obviously they'll be able to guide you forward exactly what is possible and what isn't possible for your place of worship. So that is just concludes the presentation. So thank you all for listening. Gloria, back to you.
Thank you very much, Kaashif. Now we are going to have Patrick Padding. Are you there? Are you connected? While Patrick
Yes, I'm here.
is on his camera, here he is. Okay. So Patrick is police officer and team leader from the central unit of the Netherlands Police. Welcome. And he's also the iLead coordinator. iLead is also a EU-funded project, which he's going to present. Patrick, can you share your screen, please?
Yes, I will.
Thanks.
And then thank you also for inviting me. There's a small issue in my system, but maybe you can display my PowerPoint as well.
You want me to share your PowerPoint?
Yeah, it would be best because it immediately alerts all the things in my computer, so it will take some time to get the settings right in Zoom.
Yeah.
No, but meanwhile,
after 2 years, we are still trying to do our best.
okay.
Catalina, can you share the presentation? It's called iLead.
Yes, good. I will focus not only on iLead, because iLead is an Horizon 2020 project, which is running already for 4 years. So it's a 19-part, 3.5 million project focusing on how law enforcement can connect with research and technology. But I will also brief you a bit about NLETS, the European network I'm leading, as well as I will zoom into Protect. Click please 3 times, then you will have the logos. Yes, that's correct. And another one. So thank you first of all. And what I just saw, I think you are having a very nice project, which is also very tangible and in the results are very practical. If you click again, for the menu of today, I would like to give a short presentation of the relevant projects and activities. I will not go into that much detail as, for example, in iLead, we are having 25 sessions with 25 topics, which always end up with 25 advices on how to standardize and how to work with technology for law enforcement. So that will be just a short overview, but also a short impression on how we see standards and security as well. Then I'm also very pleased that I saw AFUS in the chat or in this meeting, as well as CEN and CENELEC. We are also working with CEN and CENELEC by NEN, the Dutch Institute for Standards, but also we worked with AFUS in our Protect project. Next one, please. Just very short about the network. The network is the European Network of Law Enforcement Technology Services. We are bringing together 30 member states, 27 European member states, and 3 affiliated. There's a core group, you could say a board and management, that is leading the network. I'm the core group leader, so it's my full-time task to lead the network and to take care of the boundary conditions and the projects. So what we do is we are establishing technology interest group to focus on specific technology, which is useful for law enforcement and therefore also we are initiating European projects. So it's a knowledge transfer, and we are working together with law enforcement, industry, as well as research. Next one, please. Very short, started in 2008, we had some issues and we restarted again with a new course, mission and vision. So what you see in consecutive order is that we have been able to initiate a lot of programs in which we could dance the interest of law enforcement. And at date also, NLETS is mentioned in the public action plan for public protection, SOAR action plan for public protection, as well is mentioned in various council conclusions and policy papers. So we do have the position and the ability to connect with policy and transfer from policy into policing and vice versa. Next slide, please. So I think it's important that if you look upon the things we do in law enforcement, NLETS is focusing on frontline policing, crime, as well as in public protection. What you see most often that law enforcement is diving into crime. Of course, it is, has a horrendous impact, but frontline policing and technology, as well as public protection, are equally important for this. So we cannot prevent crime without frontline policing. We cannot prevent terrorist attack without having measures and conditions for public protection. And therefore, technology cuts across. And it's also important to recognize that sharing best practices, how it's being done, is relevant. Activating co-creation to stimulate small, medium enterprises and businesses to come up with new and interesting technology is important. But also in the long term to look upon what kind of research can be done to make sure that the next practices will be in place for sure. Next slide, please. So this is a brief overview of last year, you could say. We are receiving a direct grant from the European Commission as a European network for law enforcement, which gives us a solid basis to build upon. We are well organized, I could say. The Police Platform for Homeland Security is our full-time secretariat. We are well equipped in this way. So what we do is that we are launching various projects in this area. Lyme disease, about dark web and drugs. And one thing I would like to mention, for example, next to protect and IDT, is quick response for operational centers. So we brought together the operational centers in Europe to discuss how we can be prepared against terrorist attack, but also how we can share data cross-border quite easily and quickly. So we can, with a mechanism, a special application to do so. Protect and ILEAD will be discussed in the next slide, please. So give me the next slide. ILEAD, it was already mentioned, dialogue. So we came up with the innovation for law enforcement agencies dialogue to have a, you could say, a chat, to have a dialogue also with industry and research, as most often public bodies are not that well connected with other institutes that can be very helpful. So here you see in a glance our partners, and if you give me the next slide and just click, it's really focusing on practitioners, and click again please. And so frontline, click then, there are 5 clicks to go. Crime, cross-border, and then forensics, click again, and 3 times again, click. It's about innovation, 2 clicks on the social dimension and on the technology. So it's, you could say, an all-inclusive way. So we bring together law enforcement as you're bringing together the communities and to discuss about the state of play, what's needed, what can be done. And it is being showcased in the next slide. So this is the methodology, and it's really, I think, a proven methodology. So the user needs, the capabilities of law enforcement are being discussed in practitioner groups, the 5 themes I just mentioned. We do have a special workshop in place to extract those needs And what we do from there is that we are looking into technology. What kind of technology is available? What kind of research is available? It could be also that in other areas there's research which is very helpful, but there's a huge market for technology. So there are a lot of useful tools for law enforcement to be used. So what we do is that we are bringing together law enforcement, we are scanning technology and research, and then left corner below, you see standardization and procurement. There's a lot to tell about this. It will go beyond the time I have, but we're trying to describe in what way, what kind of procedures, what kind of technical standards we need to apply to use this technology in an appropriate way. So this is bridging between, you could say, the potential of technology and procurement, but also to come up with a methodology in which we will say, okay, if we are using this technology, this will be the baseline, the standards. And the other part, the other cogwheel is about capacity and legacy building, in which we are bringing together the knowledge, and that knowledge is being shared between all the law enforcement. So the methodology is in this big project quite extensive, quite big, but it's very useful also for very small and smaller projects. Next slide, please. And to just click, then you will see that all the stars will go into the member states. It showcases that we are having 11 law enforcement consortium partners, and that since 2021 in December, 323 practitioners had the opportunity to work with us in those practitioner groups. And please click. There you see the stars. Okay, it doesn't run as it should be, but please click again and we go to the next slide. Our items are, of course, different than your items, but these are the slices, the topics of interest that we've picked to bring together law enforcement and then to extract the needs, and then also to make sure that we will describe the technology and to search for the most appropriate standards. So it's about frontline policing, roadside, domestic violence, digital investigations, people trafficking, all the 5 themes that are in the gray area above. Next slide, please. I think the most closest to your project is the closed project called Protect. It was an ISF-funded 2-year project. It's maybe nice to tell that NLETS is also then mentioned in the Action Plan for Public Protection, but also we are a member of the Practitioners Forum, a forum of practitioners which will support the Commission in discussing how law enforcement can protect public places, but also NLETS is mentioned as a bridge between research and industry and law enforcement. So this Protect project brought together cities, law enforcement, as well as research institutes, and becoming also very tangible. At that day, the Commission just released the vulnerability assessment tool. So we used the tool and we will also study the tool, and we brought it in practice to make sure that also the Commission will be able to adjust and to learn from this. Please click. And we have been working with EFUS, and therefore 207 cities had access to our manuals and the vulnerability assessment tool, but also the description of best practice and the technology. It was a pity that COVID came in, but in the way that we planned it for Malaga, Eindhoven, Lagasse, Brasov, and Vilnius, we would have test beds for technology. So what we did is based on the manuals and all the material which is still available on the website, and I just recently shared some of our manuals also. We sent out a request for information based on the vulnerability assessment tools, the weak spots, the needs of the cities, and therefore industry came in with a lot of solutions that are on the market. So via a special procedure, the cities themselves were able to pick out the right technology and to make sure that the technology will stand demoed in the cities. Due to COVID, it became more or less virtual demos showing the usefulness, but it was the aim to do this on the local market square, even near the church, in the proximity of a shopping mall, etc., etc., etc. And please click again. So what we did is that quite similar, I think, with your project, where that we identified the weak spots, but then in the cities. And also we learned that it's about multidisciplinary teamwork. Like in places of worship, you need to work with your local community, your own community, law enforcement, the public authorities, etc., to ensure that you will know your weaknesses and that you can prevent and take measures to protect yourself and to make sure that there's a security level in place. So most often, a lot of cities came back to us and said, you know, this is the first time we ever worked with a shopping mall, that we ever worked with a local community to look upon the vulnerability of our cities. Also, if you look upon the website of Project, you see a long list of technology that have been selected by those various cities to be tested. It could be either how to make sure that you will recognize threats on the dark web, or how you can set parameters, how you can detect arms, concealed arms in a crowd, how you can work with removable bullets, etc., etc., etc. So the cities selected the most applicable technology, and as I already mentioned, we came up with a lot of alternatives, video demos, and small tests in the cities instead of having very large-scale demos. Was the intention. Next slide, please. So, security standards from our perspectives. You could say there are hard standards as being displayed just in this session about windows, doors, and locks, and they are measurable, recognizable, and mostly certificated. So there are tests being done how a door can resist a fire or any force, etc., etc. But also, I think it's important that if you look upon technology, if you are buying technology to make something like a surveillance system, that you're buying in this way that also your technology will be future-proof. Most often it's a one-time investment, it's costly, but please also look at the way the vendor makes this technology. So you could say it should be a bit more open, that if there are new features, new software available, that it can easily be added to your technology, and not that you're buying something from a vendor which is making his own software a very close, their own standards, you could say, which will mean that before you will know that the technology will run out and the vendor has to make new features, and it will take very long. Next to the hard standards, open standards, standard operational, the word is twice there, procedures, the human factor is important. Already mentioned, you know, the outdoor surveillance, the human factor, but the training of people is important. Make sure that they are aware, make sure that they are feeling safe, make sure that they are feeling also a bit comfortable, but also train them in a way that if something occurs, that they know how to handle. The example of the fire escape was already mentioned, but there is a more or less balance that people are feeling comfortable, but are well trained and a bit prepared, instead of having panic and having a lot of issues to solve when a threat occurs. So awareness, acceptance also, and training are basic components. I think in law enforcement, we are a bit more aware and used to accept standard operational procedures, but also for civilians and community is really important. So a harness door is fantastic, but if you will leave the door open, there's no use to buy a door like this. So it's more the inclusive part of the human factor. And it's multidisciplinary work, as I just mentioned. Okay, thanks. The next slide, please. Thank you for listening. I do recognize that our view is maybe a bit different if you look upon iLead, but the work we do in the NLS network is also really valuable for public protection. I can mention that also the outcome of Protect was also another project looking at the vulnerability of places of worship. And yeah, that was it from my side. So back to you.
Thank you, Patrick. Now I will give the floor to Christina Thorngren and Alena Simkova from CEN-TC 325. CEN is the European Committee for Standardization. Hi, Christina.
Yes, hello. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Okay, let me just share my screen then.
Perfect.
Start from the beginning.
Yeah.
And then should be full screen mode now.
Yeah.
Thank you for the kind introduction, and also thank you so much for inviting us. It's really a pleasure to be here and such an interesting topic. I've learned a lot this morning. I will keep my presentation very short just because I just want to give you a very general introduction to CEN mainly, so that then Ms. Simkova can tell you more about the activities and the more interesting part, I think, for you. But I'm a project manager at the CEN and CENELEC Management Center in Brussels, and I follow the security sector specifically. And so I also work together with Ms. Simkova. So in terms of standardization bodies, you might be most familiar with ISO or ISO, which is the International Standardization Organization. We then have IEC for electrotechnical matters and ITU for telecommunications. And then at the European level, that's where CEN and CENELEC come in, and also ETSI for telecommunications again. And we, at the European level, also have some specificities, which is that thanks to a EU regulation, Regulation 1025, we also guarantee a seat at the table for certain, let's say, stakeholder groups, such as for consumers, for the environment, and for trade unions. And so because they're referred to in Annex 3 of said regulation, we call them Annex 3 organizations. We do also have partnerships with cross-sectorial organizations, and also many liaisons at the technical level with sectorial organizations. And I think what Ms. Simkova will also get into in her part of the presentation is how the engagement works in terms of how to get involved in standardization. But at the European level, this typically happens through our national members, where they delegate experts to European committees. But not only, but mainly. So just to give you an idea of the members that we currently have 34 national members, and then each country might have 1 or 2 standardization bodies present. In terms of numbers, so combined CEN and CENELEC, we have about 200,000 experts present all around Europe. Which make up the technical committees that we have, one of which is Technical Committee 325. And then we have about 2,000 working groups. These then again sit under the technical committee level, and they are typically the groups that will be in charge of drafting standards. And so we have about almost 23,000 standards published currently. And then we have other types of deliverables that sit sort of slightly below standards in the hierarchy, but I won't go into too much detail on that. So we have CEN workshop agreements, which you might have heard of. We have so-called technical specifications, and also technical reports. Yeah, so a little bit about the development process, perhaps. So firstly, you might wonder, well, what is a European standard? So maybe let's start by by covering that. So it is a document for common and repeated use. It's produced by all interested parties in an open, transparent, and consensus-based process. It can be a tool, absolutely, for underpinning legislation, typically EU legislation, in the case of European standards, but it is still voluntary in use. European standards are also automatically transposed into national standards, which means that any conflicting national standards are withdrawn. And that creates a sort of harmonization across our members. And we do also have close ties with our international counterparts. So the work is integrated. We avoid duplication of resources. And where possible, we also favor a global solution rather than European. And here on the right, you have a screenshot of a beautiful title page of one of the standards developed by CEN/TC 325. Here in this case, it is on the prevention of crime regarding urban planning and building design. And this is a standard that outlines the different terms, basically, and definitions in the field. So how do we develop these standards? We do that by being consistent, by providing coherence, and also developing timely standards, making sure that they're available for when the market and industry needs them. And how do we do this? By involving all relevant parties. This is absolutely essential in trying to get the widest market acceptance and uptake of the standards once they're published. And we do well, we're very proud of the open and transparent and also inclusive process that we have, which we think gives us a distinctive factor over fora and consortia. I should mention at this point that CEN, CENELEC, and ETSI are also the three officially recognized European standardization organizations by EU Regulation 1025, just adding that in there. And so we see ourselves as providing a platform to balance these different views and enable the creation of consensus-based standards, which takes the time it takes. I mean, I would say probably for a European standard, 2.5 to 3 years. But you know, that also impacts the quality, and so faster is not always better. So just to summarize, the key kind of idea here is that once you develop a European standard, that effectively leads to 34 identical national standards, because all of the conflicting standards will have to be removed. And that then allows better access to market, which is roughly 600 million consumers in Europe. So one of the facts of why standards are interesting. And that was it from me. Thank you very much. And I will hand over to Ms. Simkova now.
So thank you, Christina. And now I will share my screen with you. Okay. So thank you for your invitation. I'm pleased to have the opportunity.
Sorry to interrupt, but we cannot see your screen.
Yeah.
Do you want me to share it? Would it be better? Okay.
Yes, that's okay.
Let me just open the presentation.
So that's a technical program also. Okay.
Let me know when you want me to change the slide. Okay. Can you see the screen?
Yes, I see. And you? That's okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. So may I start?
Yes, please.
Yes, thank you very much. So I'm pleased to have the opportunity to participate in this evening, in this event. And I have, my name is Alena Simkova. I run the consultancy office in Prague, the Czech Republic, and I chair the technical standardization committee, CNTC 325. Which deals with the development of security standards. So, as Christina said, the development of European standards is very complicated, and for your information, maybe in a cube, that I would like to say that the work in the development of European standards results in it is usually channeled by the members, the CEN national standardization bodies, and the standard development can be described in a brief as follows. If enough national standardization bodies show a willingness to participate in the standard development process, the work is assigned to the technical body in relevant field, and the drafting of the European standard is developed by experts within the relevant technical body. And then there are mirror committees of national standardization bodies. They provide their contributions, their national contributions during the development of the standard, and the process is also monitored by a number of observers, including representatives of external association and what is very important, other bodies associated with the technical body. For your information, what is the goal of my presentation? I would like to share with you a frame information about the activities of the technical committee CNTC 325, which deals with the development of European security standards focused on building design. Regarding the content of the presentation, I would like to note that I am aware that the participants of my presentation today do not have to be actively and fully informed in a detail about the development of security standards focused on building design and their practical use. It should be noted that this discipline is relatively new, although it is constantly evolving and gradually becoming known to the technical public. So I try to approach the whole problematic in individual steps and show the benefits of using security standards on a practical example. The European Security Standards Series 14383 are developed under the leadership of skilled experts and conveners of three technical three working groups which work within the technical committee, and those security standards are produced or described in line with the SEPTAT principles and strategies. Crime prevention through environmental design, which is SEPTAT abbreviation, alternatively called by security by design, SBD, designing out crime, defensible space, and also are applied as a multidisciplinary approach to crime prevention. This approach uses urban and architectural design and the management of built and national environments. And this tool is very effectively designed in order to reduce victimization, deter offenders' decision that precede, as you know, criminal acts, and build a sense of a community along inhabitants. What this means that inhabitants can again gain territorial control of areas, reduce crime and minimize fear of crime, which is very important. And as you know, the situation prevention is based on the experience that certain types of crime occur at certain places under certain conditions and times, and it is necessary because it helps to predict crime prevention, prevent crime, and minimize the risks.
Sorry, Alena, for the interruption. Could you just check that we're on the right slide, because I've slightly lost track.
Yes, that's okay. This slide.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. Yes, okay. So experts of our committee and experts from our working groups cooperate with International SEPTAT Association. This association is a non-profit association founded in Calgary, Canada in 1996, and for our work, it is important that the ISA promotes the use of SEPTAT globally. It helps improve the quality of life through the use SEPTAT principles and strategies, promotes knowledge, develops further SEPTAT theory and practice through collaboration with relevant stakeholders and disseminations. For us is very, very important that ISA supports local organizations and communities practitioners, and it helps this co-working helps create safer communities and environments. And the structure of the technical committee 325. As I said, our experts work on the development of security standards, which are focused at industrial facilities, hospitals, department stores, education institutions, schools, for example, universities, squatters, and public meeting spaces. And those standards are designed through background through building facility and design. Those standards include risk assessment procedures, strategies, and security levels, and which is very, very important, may be applied to new and significantly refurbished buildings, areas, and facilities. The scope of technical committee says that the committee, the experts of the committee, produce standards which are focused on prevention through building, facility, and area design. As I said, in our committee work, three working groups, and three working groups, and our experts are aware that our experts not only produce security standards, but they also are involved in promotion standard series and training their practical use. This slide show you published standards from the technical committee, produced in technical committee. Those standards are focused on urban planning and, as I said, schools, open places, and shops, offices, and dwellings, and so on. And we also work on a new standards. You can see our work program. We are already aware of the need of the protect religious institutions and communities in Europe because of the growing attacks of criminal nature. And that is why we decided to discuss this topic at the coming plenary meeting in October this year. And if we reach the consensus, we will start work on a new standard that will cover the security requirements of those places. You can see that the new standard on schools is in preparing. It was accepted, and then another new standard on principles of and design. And one example of disrespecting the accepted principles, at the first glance you can see the place which looks nice. It's entrance to a newly built apartment building, but according to accepted principles, it is a dark corner hidden behind vegetation. which constitutes a potential threat, and it does not allow sufficient control over the territory. So such an arrangement do not provide the required sense of security. And at the conclusion, standards. If I conclude what I said, standards series 14383, which are developed in structures of the technical committee 325. Those standards are developed in line with the SEPTED principles, and they can be applied to minimize perform crime prevention through architectural solutions. They can bring a number of benefits to residents and minimize situation conditions leading to crime by means of organization measures, changes in regimes and physical and technical means. And SEPTED principles, it is necessary to underline that when the SEPTED principles are properly applied in the building design, they can bring a number of benefits to residents, especially cohesion and gaining control over the territory. The SEPTED and the practical application of security standards will be also discussed at the coming international conference. This conference will take place on October 6 this year in Prague, and this conference will be divided into 3 thematic blocks. Participants will discuss the standardization in urban planning, design and building, and the SEPTED concept and benefits for urban security. Examples of good practice using the SEPTED and technical standards, and use SEPTED from the eyes of police practice. I would like to stress that among the lectures and examples for good practice, we ask to a representative representative from all over the Europe. The conference is intended for experts, city representatives, the police, and other institutions from all over the Europe. If you are interested in this conference participating, so don't hesitate and contact me, and I am able to arrange an official invitation for you. So I would like to thank you for your attention, and if you have any questions, do not hesitate and contact me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alena. Thank you very much also to Christina. I hope that we will continue the discussion after October when new standards for places of worship will be published, will be available. Now it's time for a quick sli.do interactive session. So again, open your browser and go to sli.do, or let me just share the screen with all the details. Full screen. Okay. So you can go to sli.do and insert the hashtag, the code SBD, or otherwise you can scan the QR code that you will find in every question, in every slide. So the presentations today underline the importance of risk assessment to determine the operational need for an organization. Of those represented here today, which faith organizations have completed this? I mean, I think we have faith leaders among our audience, so might be an interesting question for them. Okay, I must go through SOAR. I guess you mean SOAR project. I hope. Again, for those connected later, yes, my church. SOAR project again. Glad to provide some guidance in that. Yeah, but the answer is more like which faith organizations. So, I mean, if you answer, it's because yes, you already took that into account, but we would like to know which institution, which faith organization. If it's not too confidential. Lil Mosque, thank you. Let's wait for a few seconds more. Church in Cole. Okay, a mosque in Montpellier. That's interesting. It's so we know where to address future SOAR events and discussions. Next question then. Okay. Understanding the risk is important. Apart from media reports, do you have access to reliable risk information from your municipality or local police? Yes, totally. Yes, partially. No. No. Okay. Hopefully the person who answered no might find some interesting information today. Yes, partially. Okay, so 50-50. Okay, I will then move to the next question. If advice was available that could inform you on incremental steps to improve security and safety, would you use that advice? Okay, that's great news. Not that obvious question. For those that have considered their risks and have identified the need for improvements or other measures, how much is the potential cost for those improvements to happen? So what's like a quick estimation for your place of worship to implement those security measures? Okay. This is also related to one of the topic that was raised in the past events, where people were really asking on how to get funding for protect their places of worship. So this is also an interesting topic that we could discuss furtherly in upcoming events. Okay, more than 20,000 euros is the majority. Now to connect back again to the previous presentations, do you follow any standard operation procedures in your places of worship? Yes. Okay, so hopefully publication that will come in October will be helpful, or also the SOAR free resources. And for those who answered yes to the previous email, to the previous question, sorry, which standards do you follow and or no? This is open-ended question, so you can just type whatever you know. CPTD, of course, we talked about it. I mean, now we know about it. Thank you to our speakers. CCTV standards. Okay. Door standards. Okay, let's go back. Let's go forward to the next question. Do you have any CCTV installed at your place of worship? Okay, so 57% says yes and 43 says no. If you answered yes to the previous questions, where does this footage go to and who is controlling the video? If it's something that you would like to share with us. This is also an open-ended question, so you can type whatever you wish. Central management in office, okay. Police. Through up controlled by manager. Wow, this is pretty interesting. Also, another topic raised during the past events was digitalization of places of worship. So this might be a good point for discussion. CCTV control room, okay. Okay, I think that nobody's typing. So let's go back let's go on with the next question. So do you have special windows or doors installed at your place of worship? So how are the entrances managed? Okay, so 50-50. Let's wait maybe a few seconds more. Okay, someone wants to answer? No? Okay, there's a no, yes, 57% now. Okay. Would you find it useful if you complained reliable and proven security guidelines suitable for places of worship were published at a central point? Okay. Yes, totally. Okay, so we are in a good path, let's say. And would you find these guidelines more useful if focusing at EU or or national level? Okay, so the majority prefers the EU level. And should the guidelines be linked to sources for further advice, such as specialists, architects? I mean, we saw today that a multidisciplinary approach might be, I don't want to influence your your answer, but I mean, we saw that might work better with a multidisciplinary approach. Okay. Okay, so 100% said yes, so this is also encouraging. And this was the last questions. And now if you have any other questions from the chat, I will stop sharing the screen so I can see that. I cannot see any questions. I don't know if someone would like to raise one last comment, one last point.
I might want to add a few comments, Gloria, if that's okay.
Sure, yeah.
Sorry, first of all, sorry?
Mr. Ernst Scheving is also one of the SOAR experts and architects. Please, from Denmark. Yeah, I forgot to mention, please.
No, you're welcome. Yeah, we work quite a lot with securing religious institutions and state institutions in Denmark. But to make it short, there were so many really very interesting topics here today. So just to pick on a few of them and to supplement what Kaashif said about the CCTV world, it has improved tremendously over the past few years what you can actually achieve by way of technology. And this is on the one side a massive enhancement for making use of CCTV, but on the other hand, for example, in Denmark, we have a rather strict legislation covering privacy of individuals. So therefore, you cannot use cameras which can identify faces or even license plates on cars and stuff like that in the public realm. And you have to make sure that you cannot see more than 30 meters out into public space from where the camera is mounted, unless it's a specifically threatened site, and therefore the national police and police intelligence will make sure that there can be made some dispensations so that you can put up cameras in those places. And that specifically with religious sites is often it's quite a challenge, because as we saw in some of the pictures, we're dealing with existing fabric directly onto the street. no private room between a perimeter and the place of worship. It's a delicate journey and task really to solve these matters. It can be solved in a number of ways, and therefore going further into all the Euronorm and the need for standards in this area and guidelines. I'm very much, as a practitioner, in favor of establishing all these guidelines. Again, I think that standards, strict standards, empiric standards, can be applied to some of this, but not necessarily to all the various issues. The citing of a place of worship, and Alena also said that in one of her slides, that it's mostly applicable to new build and where you are dealing with extensive refurbishments of renovation of one sort or another. So, and typically in places of worship for a number of religions, we are dealing with cultural heritage sites which have been there for maybe hundreds of years. And for a number of reasons, we can't make that fit into the horseshoe of a Euronorm being all too specific. So what I could think of would be ways of developing means of assessing afterwards the actual success rate and impact of the various means you use to improve the security of the site. So it's a sort of reverse standard that can be used as a means of getting better, improving all the time, learning how to do things more proficient in the future. So that's in short my comment.
Yes, totally. Makes sense. And also, this is what we are going to discuss on the event in the event on the 28th of June in Amsterdam, because we will focus on more on historic and existing building, which have it's really difficult to imagine a standard for such a wide how to say wide typologies. I mean, how can you adapt a standard to so many different typologies of buildings? So if there are no other further comments or final remarks, we have a shy audience today. Okay, well, in that case, I would thank you all for joining us today. I leave you here the SOAR Project website. I also gave you a few interesting links in the chat during the meeting. And I will send you soon the recording and the presentations of the speakers, so you can also check those. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope to see you in Amsterdam or online with another SOAR event. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.